Good day. So today I was working on a project, and that was a project for one of my clients. He has a very good business in Dubai, and practically his business was active for about 10 years, making a good amount of revenue. And also on the other side, everything seems to be clear. He has no problems with the back office. Everything is very well organized. He has no problems with the financial statements. Everything is done on time. No problems with the taxes. And right now, he has a buyer for his client. But there is a big issue. And the issue is that the company is a startup. And the startup doesn't own a lot of assets. On the other side, there is no intangible asset in the list of the assets of my client. So in that case, it would be really hard for the seller, for the buyers, to pay a good amount of money for this business. So in that case, what should we do? And of course, this is a problem that a lot of different startups, a lot of different businesses will face. There are a lot of costs that we can put as intangible assets. There are a lot of ways in order to legally update our EBITDA, update the profit of the company, and make the company more valuable and more sellable. But because we do not know those, practically main key notes, there are always problems in that case. In this presentation and in this video, I'm going to talk more about the ways that we can make the company more valuable. So for that, I will start with talking about the valuation, and I want to tell you that what is the value of a company. And after that, we will talk about the ways that we can improve the valuation of the company. For sure, in this presentation, I'm going to focus mostly on the intangible asset side of the companies, the businesses, especially the startups, and I will talk mostly about that. And later on, maybe I make some other videos about the other parts, but the main focus would be on this case. In case you are interested about this topic and similar topics, in this channel, I'm trying to find different ways to make revenue, to increase the amount of the saving, and help myself and my viewers to have a better life, more valuable life, with more earnings and more savings. So I will start the presentation soon. But before that, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, and give me the comments that are in your mind. There are different ways to value a business. A very simple approach that is traditionally used in the market is the way that we call it practically seller discretionary earning multiplied by industry multiplier, and that gives you the value that is approximately a rough estimation of the business value of the company or the valuation of the company. However, you should add all the assets and subtract all liabilities, and that would be a price that you can negotiate on it. Okay, this is good for the cases like a medical clinic, a radiology clinic, a supermarket, or any type of businesses which are traditional. On traditional businesses, we have a bunch of assets, and practically based on those assets, there are some sorts of revenue. For example, in a radiology clinic, you have different, I don't know, CT scans, X-ray devices, and so on and so on. And based on that, you are earning some amount of money per each client. At the end of the year, the total amount of the profit that you made, the total amount of the money that you made after the taxes and after clearing all the things without considering the depreciation is called to be the seller discretionary earning, or the total benefit that you earn. In this money, you are not considering the costs of, for example, the salary of the owner, because we assume that, practically owner is kind of separated from the business, even if the owner is working full-time on the business. You are not considering practically the cost of driving from home to the office, because we assume that the owner is living in the neighborhood of the same business. So there are some, considerations. But the point is that after this value, you have to add the amount of the assets that you have. So for example, in the radiology clinic, you have the devices, you have the tables, you have the decorations, and all of these assets will be added. On the other side, all the liabilities, and also, okay, let alone the cash on hand, any kind of the money that you have on the box or whatsoever, and then you subtract the liabilities. So the account payable, the amount of the money that you have to pay in 2 months to, for example, the maintenance team or whatsoever, which is considered to be the liability, is subtracted, and it would be, the final estimated value of your business. But here there is a problem. What if you do not have any assets? And what if your business is a startup? What if the amount of the money that you are making is not, practically you cannot find the industry multiplier for it? Yeah. So in that case, how should you, make a valuation of your business? So in the traditional, we talked about the case that how should we deal with it? But right now about some kind of a startup, some kind of a business which is, doing the services. For example, let me give you an example. This client of mine has a business in hospitality sector. Services, it provides services of cleaning for different, type of businesses in big hospitals, big hotels, all five-star hotels, big kind of, stadiums, and so on and so on. So it is a cleaning service. The only thing that they have as assets are a bunch of, devices for cleaning, and maybe, and also they even rented, an office. But the amount of the profit that they're making is something very interesting. On the other side, how many of this type of business are working in, for example, Dubai or in Emirates? How many of them are in the same size? How many of them are, doing the services to the same sector? How can we find the industry multiplier in that case? It would be a hard task. So because of that, we are not using this method of, business valuation for these type of cases and also for the startups. So what do? We use the DCF valuation. And I will talk about the DCF valuation right now. But before that, if you did not, subscribe to this channel, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. In DCF, the strategy is different. So we assume that we have a source of money generating or money, printing that is giving us money each year. So for the case of the business of my friend or my client, the amount of the benefit, the free cash flow that at the end of each year the business was creating was something like 3 million AED, Arabic Emirat dirham, which is around, $800,000, $900,000. So we have an asset that at the end of each year is making us something like 3 million dirham. So we consider 1, 2, 3, 4, n different years we are earning 3 million dirhams. So what is the value of this asset? The simplest way to consider is that, you assume that you have a big, practically amount of money, and you put it on a bank. What would be the amount of the interest rate that the bank is giving to you in order to, receive the value of 3 million Arabic Emirat dirham at the end of each year? So this is the main, mindset in our case. There are some norms that how can we find, the interest rate, the bank interest rate. For sure, it's not bank. For sure, the risk of business is higher. For sure, the guys who are involved in the business want higher risk than the interest rate in the bank. Other than that, they would go to the bank and put the money there. So for sure, the risk is higher. And in that case, the amount of the discount rate will be much higher. The interest rate is much higher. By the way, we assume that, for a specific period of time, it will work. And after that, there would be just a terminal value, a value of just the assets. We say that, okay, for example, in a period of 10 years, this business works. And after that, we have just, a series of assets like devices that we're going to sell. Based on that, we assume that how much would be the value of the business today. But here there is a big problem. And the problem is that the traditional investors, or maybe a lot of investors, would love to invest on the assets and the things that they can feel. But a business that is, just cleaning business and practically providing the services to different sector, how can you prove that this business will last forever? How can you prove that it can work for 10 years? You compare it to our radiology clinic. In the radiology clinic, you have devices, and the devices have 10 years of guarantee. So you are sure for 10 years you have the devices. Whatever happens, any of the stuff, if goes, away, nothing bad will happen. But in that case, the story is absolutely different. So for this case, one of the things that the investors are looking is the amount of the asset. Even if you say that it is a specific startup, its value is mostly on the website that it has, on other things that has. And the problem of my client is that he doesn't have any, intangible assets in the list of his assets. He has very minor, assets, because his business doesn't need that much of assets. He has some computers, some cleaning devices, some, softwares, and so on. But he doesn't have any intangible assets. But what can be an intangible asset, and what is the benefit of that? The intangible asset is any asset which is not tangible. So it is the simple definition of that. And what is the definition of an asset? Everything, in order to be an asset, has to have three different criteria. You should have control over it. It should be coming from, it should be the result of a transaction. And also it should lead to a future benefit for the company. For example, when you were talking about a tangible asset, you can consider the radiology clinic and the radiology device. It is something that you bought it, you have the full control over it. So if somebody come and takes it out of your office, you can go and say, hey, it is mine. And the next thing is that it is a source of making revenue for you. But in your startups, usually you do not consider the assets. You do not have the assets, tangible assets mostly, but you have a lot of intangible assets that you do not consider, recording them. So what are these intangible assets? So one of them, in countries like Qatar, Abu Dhabi, in United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, these kind of countries, one of the assets is your staff, because the staff has some specific criteria. In order to hire a staff, you are paying an amount of money. You have a very specific contract with the staff, that the staffs are not allowed to work with anybody else. You have control over them for a period of time. They are making revenue for you, but the costs of one of the problems that this company had was that the costs related to acquiring staffs was not considered as an intangible asset. You may ask, how could it be possible that we consider a staff as an asset? Okay, I will give you some examples. There are a lot of different ways that you can consider some things as assets. The thing that I'm talking about right now is for the companies, for the countries that the people need the work, a special type of work permits issued by their, in fact, employee in order to be able to work. And it is a costly process. So let's consider IFRS. One of the things that is mentioned is that, okay, there are different examples of self-explanatory, examples, or for example, the licensing. These are the examples of the intangible assets: the licensing, royalty, standstill agreement, lease agreement, construction and permit, franchise agreement, operating agreement, and let's consider this case: employment contracts that are beneficial contract from perspective of employer, because the pricing of those contracts is below their current market value. Okay. Even the contract, if you have a contract which its value is lower than the current market value, can be considered as an intangible asset. Let alone the case that for getting, some staff to work in the countries, in UAE, in Saudi, in Qatar, you need to spend a lot of money for getting the permits of work. So that staff, or it's better to say that the contract of the staff can be considered as an intangible asset. And it is better if you do not consider them as the admin costs, put them in profit and loss records, but at the same time you try to put them in the balance sheet in the intangible assets, and with any of the practically staff that you have based on the tenor that the uh, employees have in practically the process of their life. So, for example, if they stay in your company for 2 years or 5 years or whatsoever, you make the depreciation on it. So this is one of the sources that you can consider as intangible assets. Another important cost that you do not consider usually as your intangible asset is the cost of developing your website or any source of platform, web application, mobile application, or whatever else that you have. So let's consider that according to IFRS, there are a series of processes that should happen from planning, application and infrastructure development, like getting the domain name, developing hardwares, operating softwares, graphical design and content development, that are considered as development phase of the mobile app or the website or whatsoever. And after that, the operating stage. So we have two stages, and both of these stages, costs can be considered as the costs, as the practically intangible assets, and they can be behaved based on IAS 38, which is specifically dedicated to the intangible assets. Let's consider one more thing. If you are selling your website, so practically if you are providing a product for other companies, in that case you are not allowed to consider that cost, the cost of development, as the in fact intangible assets. So but if you are using the website for your company, or you are using your website for external practically users, either using it as a practically system like CRM to be in connection with your customers, or using it as a system for your managing your warehouses. In any of these cases, it would be considered as a asset, intangible asset. Another important point: if you buy a website from somebody, you should be careful to register it as register the ownership of the website in your contract. So it should be specifically mentioned that all the rights related to this website is transferred through this contract to you, because there is a possibility that you are going to sell your business. The due diligence process happens, but in the due diligence, it becomes clear that, okay, you had a website, your main revenue comes from website, but who is the owner? And if you do not have the contract with your web development, outsourced party, you will face big problems. So this is another point that you have to take care of. Another point that I want to mention is that you try to make your business more sellable by working on the financial statements. Yeah, so you try for a period of, for example, 1 year before the time that you are going to sell the business. You try to make the costs less. If you are practically considering some cost for launch of your staff, you try to reduce it. If you are considering some costs for some kind of for example, your driver, if you have driver that drives you from home to office, you try to pay it by your pocket and do not consider it as the cost of your company, and try to reduce the cost. In that way, the business seems to be more profitable, and it is more interesting for the buyer to buy that business. There is another important parameter that you have to consider. Prepare all the documents, because when you make a process of due diligence, there would be a process in which, in a Dropbox or in anywhere, you are supposed to put and transfer all the possible documents that you have, all the contracts that you have, all the employment contracts that you have, all practically the permits, licenses, the purchase agreements, whatever you have to prepare and provide it. So the best way is that from 6 months 8 months before the time that you are going to sell the company. Try to prepare all these documents, gather them all in a, I don't know, in for example, have the copy of them at least in Dropbox or any other place. Have all them organized in the paper formats, and to be able to to have all the documents provided. On the other side, one thing else which is very important, you should be careful that you do not have any open issues with the tax officers. You do not have any problems in your accountings, and you try to clear everything in a way that when the buyer is coming, doesn't feel any kind of risks that, okay, I'm going to buy a business that I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. So it is an important criteria that you should consider. Another point that you should take care of is that prepare all the sales contracts that you have. So if you have a contract with some kind of practically buyers who, I don't know, for example, in my case, there are a lot of 5-star hotels who are buyers of the services of my client. So the first thing that I want from my client is that, okay, you go and you check if you can make their long-term contract with the people, because in the last 5 years you've been working with them. Try to make a long-term contract for 3 years, 5 years with the with the same practically buyers, because this will be something which is an intangible asset. This contract itself is an intangible asset. And in fact, even if you do not consider it as an intangible asset, in the business negotiations, you can negotiate and you can say that, okay, I have $10 million or 10 million Arabic Emirat dirham of contracts ready. And whenever you get it, I can prove that this will lead to the cash flow for my company, and it will make the process of valuation of your company much more acceptable. Another important point is that you try to convert the costs to assets. What do I mean by that? For example, you have the softwares in your company. For the softwares, you can consider a way to put them as a tangible asset. For example, you have the Windows system. The cost of buying the Windows for the first time, if you are not using subscription plans or whatsoever, the cost of buying the service is considered as an asset because it is a part of the computer. The computer cannot work without the Windows, without Macintosh, without, I don't know, any kind of operating system. So you put that as the cost of your asset. You are buying a computer plus a software or a series of software. The cost of softwares can be added because, okay, you are, I don't know, you have a design company, your computer cannot be working without Photoshop. Yeah? So this is one of the points that you should be careful about it. The other thing, the cost of the permits. If you are getting some kind of a specific, permits, for example, again, regarding to the case of, the Gulf countries, the GCC countries, practically the thing is that, for any kind of permits, you need to pay an amount of money to get the permits. So put that as your intangible asset. I see a lot of businesses that they do not consider this. And also the trainings. So you can say that I have trained my staff, or you can define a project of, a knowledge base. You would say that, I am making the knowledge base of my company. I'm doing the knowledge management for my company or whatsoever. You are developing a system for training. Potato. There is no difference that you are training your staff or you are practically providing the system to make your knowledge base stronger. It depends on the way that you get your practically the factors. Your in fact, factura is in Polish. Your invoices, how it is mentioned. So it is better that you mention it in a way that the cost be added leads to purchase of an asset or development of an asset. The other cost, research and development. A part of the jobs that you are doing, try to put it on the research and development side. In that case, in the research side, okay, it is considered as a cost, but in the development practically side, if the initial product is developed, you can consider as the develop as an intangible asset. All the costs that you put will be added to your intangible asset, and you see that after a period of, for example, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, your intangible asset will be so high, and your business will be much more lovely for to be sold. Try to increase your recurring revenue. Try to have your to show your growth potentials in order to be able to get better deals. We will talk about these things later on. I hope that the main topics that are covered in this presentation can help you to have a better sell for your business. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you like this type of videos, I try in this channel to go and find the loopholes and the main problems that are in different businesses, and try to find some kind of loopholes in order to make the most benefit out of it. So if you like this type of videos, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Give your comments if there are any comments. I am not a CPA. I am not a chartered accountant. So and my field of study is finance. I'm still a newcomer in this sector. So you may have some comments that can help me, to better understand the accounting, aspects of this business. And I would really appreciate any of the comments from your side, guys. Enjoy and have a nice day and night.